where do we all begin?
Yeah. The thing is, first understand that food creates mood.
Food creates mood.
So we're always trying to find out ways to make ourselves happier,
Right.
think more clearly, be more satisfied, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I got so interested in this work, because with my background in nutrition and being a doctor, I thought, well, if we can control our mood through food and the actions that we take on a daily basis, why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't this first line therapy? There's really good research, a new study from South Australia, that the combination of diet and exercise
Yep.
was 1.5 times more effective for depression than the leading medications.
Now explain why. Because that's a big research result that just through food and exercise,
Yeah.
it's was found to be 1.5 times more effective than medication alone.
And if you think about it, they actually even put therapy and medications, kind of the traditional treatment, into
Yeah.
one category.
Okay.
And they compared that with changing your diet, with changing your sleep, your exercise lifestyle habits.
Okay.
And they said, we should be prescribing this as first line therapy for depression. There's multiple anxiety studies, ADHD. I mean, we are missing the boat. Obviously, we're not doing something right, because depression is skyrocketing. So is anxiety. So is obesity. So is diabetes. So is cardiovascular disease. So the status quo is not working. So why not employ these techniques and put them at the forefront? So things like we talked about in already and that are in the book are teaching you that we have control, that yes, do all the things, but also change the way you eat, change the way you exercise, get more sunlight.
Well, you might be depressed and anxious and struggling with a lot of stuff because of what you're eating
Yes.
and because of your lifestyle right now. And so I think it's really great news to hear that you can feel better if you start to eat better. And that this whole cycle that you are trapped in terms of the cravings that never end and the cycle of emotional eating and feeling lethargic and feeling anxious, that you can, based on the research and based on the work that you do with patients around the world, that when you take your food intake seriously, you can profoundly change your mood, you can change your body, you can change your lifestyle, all of it, but it begins with the food. One of the things that I love about you, Dr. Kennedy, is you are the loudest voice out there telling people you can heal anxiety, that you're not stuck feeling this way. You don't have to live your life feeling triggered or out of control or overthinking or on edge. And for somebody that is really struggling with anxiety, that seems impossible. In fact, our first question comes from a woman named Carrie. And it is a question from a woman who is extremely successful. And I'm sure she's hiding her anxiety, but it's gotten to the point where she just can't handle it anymore. So let's take a listen to Carrie.
Hey Mel, I'm a 53-year-old woman, a creative leader with, to the outside world at least, a so-called great career, I guess you'd say, but with crippling anxiety and exhausting overthinking. Traveling, accompanied by panic attacks, oh, what the heck. I've had this issue for 30 years, and all the guided meditations and mindfulness training pods in the world aren't helping. So what steps can I take to stop this, to heal and find a new peace before I chuck in the towel and just barricade myself in at home? Thanks for everything. Bye.
I really relate to Carrie because I know that I have been somebody with what they call high functioning anxiety for most of my life. That anxiety, a lot of times, like lights a fire underneath me, and that worried energy, that nervous energy, that mind that is constantly thinking 15 steps ahead has helped me be very innovative and creative and to take risks in business. But it's torturous because you're just always nervous about something and on edge.
Here's the thing, and this is true with you too, is that the anxiety drives you to succeed. A lot of people with anxiety are really intelligent. So we get very, very good at thinking. We go into our heads. We've been doing it since we've been 5 years old. So of course, it's like going to the thinking gym every day. So we get very good at thinking. We get very good at accomplishing things. The problem is that underlying trauma that I could hear in her voice for sure is driving her too much. And you went through this too. You realized, look, this isn't sustainable going this way. So the solution for her would be to find that little version of herself and see her, love her, protect her, show her that she's connected. And what we do is we find where the alarm is in your body. So with her, I would say, when you get into these anxious phases that I call alarm, and that you brilliantly call alarm all the time. I watched your one on healing childhood trauma, and you only use the term anxiety once or twice, which I just loved. But getting into the alarm in her body, which basically that alarm is a remnant of your younger self. The part of our brain, the amygdala that encodes this, has no sense of time. So that when we encode these traumatic memories, when we recall them, it doesn't feel like they're coming from the past. It feels like they're happening now. So she probably has an unresolved trauma of some kind, or traumas that are coming up in her body. And temporarily, guided meditations, breathing, all that stuff will help you. But the key out of this, and I hope everybody gets this today, if you have chronic anxiety, you have a child in you that is suffering, that is struggling. And all the guided meditations, all the breath work, all the yoga isn't going to heal that. What heals that is actually going in, finding that child, finding their eyes in a picture or even in your mind's eye, looking at them, showing them that they are seen, heard, loved, and protected in a way now that they didn't get back then. And that's how we heal the root cause of this, as opposed to just helping people cope. Because basically, most of the things that are out there today help you cope, and there's nothing wrong with coping. It's just to heal, we have to solve this at the root cause, which is typically this unresolved wounding, typically again from childhood, that's still in you, that's still activated. And until that child feels seen, heard, loved, and protected, you're always going to be anxious.
So, Dr. Kennedy, thank you for going into so much depth just out of the gate here. And I want to hit the pause button so we can hear a word from our sponsors, and so that everybody can just take a breath and digest what we just talked about. Maybe you want to find a photo of your younger self while we're listening to our sponsors. But when we come back, we're going to dig even deeper into Carrie's question. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and this is the Anxiety Toolkit on the Mel Robbins podcast. So I all of a sudden this visual came to mind, and I want to see if we can maybe tease this out into some specific steps that somebody might be able to take even on their own today with the support of your expertise. Because you described in my mind the 3 layers that somebody has to go through to address this sort of chronic on edgeness, this stress, this panic attacks that Carrie's talking about. And the first level is self-awareness, right? Mm-hmm. So there may be a large number of people that are listening to this from around the world, because at this point we're reaching 200 countries, 17 million people in 5 months, Dr. Kennedy. And there's a lot of people that are thinking for the first time, I wonder if I have anxiety. And so listening to podcasts, reading books, watching videos, or watching this show on YouTube, and having the self-awareness that maybe this is something called anxiety that you're dealing with. And what are some of the surprising signs, Dr. Kennedy, that people should be looking for that they may not know could actually be anxiety?
Well, one of the big ones that people don't really realize is constantly looking for external validation, constantly looking for love and attention outside of yourself. And when you get it, it's amazing. But when you don't get it, you get into that loneliness phase. And there's a study done, I can't remember how long ago, and I don't remember the exact, but basically it was they took women and they gave them an electric shock, not a big electric shock, and it was voluntary. And then they had 3 scenarios: one where the woman was alone, one where her hand was held by a stranger, and one where her hand was held by her partner. Now, to shorten this up, basically, the brain has to work really, really hard if you're lonely. So when she was alone, 12 places in her brain lit up. We don't have to go into orbital frontal cortex and all that kind of stuff, but 12 places in her brain. When she was held hands with a stranger, 8 places in her brain lit up. When she was holding hands with her partner, 4 places. So only 4 places needed to come online to reassure her. So it just shows that power of human connection. But if we're constantly looking for validation outside of us, that is a sign of anxiety, typically. My book, Anxiety RX, is about anxiety, but really it's about childhood trauma. For me, it showed up as chronic anxiety. For some people, it shows up as depression. Other people, it shows up as eating disorders, personality disorders. But all of it comes from some sort of unresolved childhood wounding. And it will make itself obvious. For me, when I was a child, my brother had orthopedic issues. My dad was schizophrenic. A lot of people know about that who watch my channel. So a lot of my mother's attention went to my brother and my dad. So I had this sense like, hey, what about me? Like, what about me? So I have this drive to be seen. And that's why I'm on the Mel Robbins podcast. There's a drive in me that needs to be seen and validated. But there's also a part of me that was bullied in school that hates crowds and hates attention. So for me, that's what causes. So you can have people that are highly accomplished and they're driven by their anxiety, but it's a treadmill. Eventually, after a couple of divorces, or something that happens in your life that's you can't control, then it comes out and then it's unmanageable. So it's one of the things that I see with people is looking for love in all the wrong places. All these things. Addictions are another one of those things that the reason why I think people, take drugs or alcohol or whatever is when they're in that acute phase in the brain and the GABA receptors are all lit up and you feel calm and peaceful. I think that's one of the times that people actually feel connected to themselves. It's ironic, it's odd, but in general, like anxiety, and here's one of those things that, you're so great at sound bites. Anxiety occurs because you've blocked love for yourself. That's really what happens. So one of the things that drugs and alcohol do is they take away some of those blocks. They make you feel connected to yourself.
It's so true. I've never thought about it that way.
People with anxiety and addiction hold hands. Like they are so close together. They both come from childhood wounding, and the alcohol or the drug or whatever allows people to feel connected to themselves. I just had a surgery like 3 weeks ago and they were putting me under and they put the mask on my face. And as I went under, and because anesthetics, general anesthetics are dissociative,
right?
They separate from. So as I was going under, I'm saying, okay, I love you, Rusty. I love you, Rusty. I love you, Rusty. And Rusty's my name for my 12-year-old self, right? That suffered at the hands of his dad, who wasn't abusive or violent, but just crazy. And so I just kept saying, I love you, Rusty. I love you, Rusty. I love you, Rusty. And it was just a nice way to kind of go under. And I think that's what ketamine and these psychedelics, I think it's just a way of getting connected to yourself, because that's how you heal, is you become connected to yourself. It doesn't come from outside of you. And yet, but we have to have that love from outside of us as well, of course. And, as you talk about, the biggest relationship is the relationship you have to yourself. And as cliche and woo and all that stuff as it sounds, and as a neuroscientist and a medical doctor, I sometimes want to have a seizure when I talk about this because it's just so non-scientific. But love and healing is non-scientific. We can't reduce it down to something that we can reproduce in a science lab. And that's what heals us. So science will help us cope, but I haven't seen really science help us heal. I'm going to give one more thing, and out of all the incredible advancements we've made in neuroscience in the last 15 years, and they have been amazing, very few of those advancements have actually led to different clinical outcomes when you're sitting with a patient. So that's one of the things that I'm kind of disappointed about in science a little bit. But science is very helpful at helping us cope. Physiological side, there's a bunch of things that really help us cope. But to heal, it's an inside job. You really have to learn how to connect with that younger, wounded part of you. And if you don't, you'll always have alarm. You'll always be anxious.
I'd say the one exception is the exciting research in the area of all these psychedelics. But I think you just pointed out the reason why this is the biggest breakthrough. Because when you have a guided therapeutic experience with a ketamine or an MDMA or psilocybin, you have the ability to reconnect and join in with yourself
Absolutely.
and repair what you say is the original cause of anxiety, which is a situation in childhood where you felt separate from the caregivers whose only job was to make you feel safe and loved and looked after and cared for. And so, I want to go back to, I have this vision of there are these three phases as I'm listening to you speak. There is the phase of self-awareness and awakening and this kind of wake up moment where you're like, holy cow, maybe the overthinking and the obsessiveness with, achievement, maybe feeling on edge all the time. Maybe this isn't the way I'm meant to feel. Maybe this is anxiety. So there's this first phase of self-awareness and the wake up moment. And then there's the second layer going a little bit deeper where you make an attempt to cope, whether that's through therapy or it is through breath work, or you mentioned meditation or exercise, the bazillion different things that you and I have both done for decades in order to cope with our anxiety, which for me meant trying to turn it down a little. And then there's a third and deeper phase, which is what you are teaching everybody. And that third phase is healing it and going deep and getting to the root cause, which you have so beautifully taught us is separation and feeling separate from others and feeling separate from yourself. And when you feel separate, you don't experience love. You don't experience safety. And so what I want to know, Dr. Kennedy, going back to Carrie's question, is there a simple series of steps that anybody who's listening today that's like, holy cow, I have anxiety, or I'm tired of coping and talking about anxiety, I want to go deeper and start the work of healing it? You mentioned inner child. Should we go back and get a photo of ourselves from when we were 8 years old? Like, give me like 3 things to do today to start that work, to go and reconnect with the part of ourselves that has been separate since childhood.
There's a lot of like woo-woo inner child stuff. Like people get really fired up by this concept of inner child. And I find the people that get the most fired up by the inner child, oh, that's a bunch of crap or whatever, are the ones that have the most childhood wounding because they don't want to go back there. Right?
That's right. I do have to admit, anytime anybody uses those 2 words, inner child, I'm like, ugh, eye roll.
Totally.
Sounds so stupid.
Same.
But as a neuroscientist and a medical doctor who specializes in this, what the fuck are you talking about when you say inner child?
Yeah, it's the remnant of it's that for the science people, like it's the amygdala based remnant of the trauma. So for your car accident when you rolled on the ski trip, there is your amygdala coupled the sound of crunching snow with trauma. So now whenever you go to the mailbox and you hear crunching snow, your amygdala coupled that sound with the trauma. So your body will feel exactly now when you're on your way out to the mailbox as you did back then.
I want to share one other example for those of you who haven't heard the first episode that we did with Dr. Kennedy. And there's a second coupling that happened for me, which is I was molested by an older kid during a sleepover in the 4th grade. And when I woke up the next morning, I felt in every cell of my body that something was very wrong. And what happened is the trauma, and now you're saying inner child and the base of the amygdala, coupled the experience of waking up after being a victim and the feeling that something's wrong with mourning. And
Yeah.
ever since I've been in 4th grade, I wake up every morning, and the morning itself triggers me to feel exactly the same way as a 50-year-old woman that I did when I was in the 4th grade and had woke up that morning. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And about that, when you came downstairs and your mom was making pancakes and she said, "How did you sleep, honey?" And you saw the other kid, if you had a chance at that point, if there was a magic wand where, you went over to your mother and said, "Hey, I've got to talk to you about something." And you went to a different room and then you talked about what happened and she soothed you. It's not your fault. She rubbed your back. That probably would have mitigated this whole thing. Because if
Wow.
we have this love and attention, this bubble that I call it, from our parents and caregivers, we are protected. So everyone has trauma in childhood. Like there's no way of avoiding, but there's a difference between like drama and trauma. Trauma is when the event actually changes your nervous system so it gets stuck in the on position. It's kind of like if you're on a railroad and the old time switch, the switches they used to have on the railroad.
Yeah. Yeah, of
So
course.
normally, if you go along, you've got good enough parents, you have a reasonable childhood, you go along the track is straight, and you just mature. Now, if you get trauma in there, it's like one of those railway switches that switches you off track. So it takes you into this mode of protection as opposed to this mode of growth. So if you keep going on the track, you're in a growth mode, you feel safe, as Einstein said, is the world a safe place? You feel safe. But when we have this trauma and it's not resolved at the time, that switch gets thrown and our nervous system changes. Again, I don't like using the word permanently because we can move it back, but the amygdala never forgets. There's always a remnant of that. So what we have to do is go back, find that child at that age, younger self, inner child. I usually use younger self because it doesn't turn people off so much, but find your younger self, give them the love and support now that they needed back then. Because again, the amygdala has no sense of time. So we can use that fact that the amygdala has no sense of time to connect with that for grade 4 and soothe her, give her what she needed back then. And that starts to heal the root cause. So then we can pull the switch back. But the older we get and the more that thing gets ingrained, the harder that switch is rusted into the on position. So every time the train goes down that track and we experience something like that, like we wake up, it goes off that track. It goes into that protection mode rather than the growth mode of going straight ahead. So if we go back, we find the switch, we heal that younger version of ourselves. And again, I know how flaky this sounds. And as a neuroscientist, it's really difficult for me to talk about the younger self, inner child. But I know after suffering from 30 plus years of crippling anxiety myself, this was the only thing that allowed me to heal, was to go back. I'm a yoga teacher. I meditation teacher. I've done all this stuff. I've done it all. And nothing really helped. And like you, I have morning anxiety or alarm. It wakes me up. I feel it. And then the big thing about having the alarm is don't add thoughts to it. Like allow the alarm to be there. Go into sensation, use your breath, use the grounding that you're around. If you're lying in your bed, feel the grounding, feel the support, feel your body, even if it's uncomfortable. And then go back and find that younger version of yourself. So you're asking for sort of a stepwise thing. So basically,
Yes.
when people get anxious, they go into their heads and they start overthinking. And that's a trap because you'll never get out of that. You'll never get out of
Right.
that overthinking because the mind will tell you. The mind says, "Hey, we have the answer with more thinking." And it's like, well, I thought anxiety was a problem of overthinking. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. Just keep thinking. And that doesn't work. So what you have to do is go into your body. Now, the problem is your body feels alarmed. So why am I going to go down into my body when it feels alarmed? And that's why we have things like internal family systems therapy, somatic experiencing, psychedelics to some extent, to make you feel safe in your body again. Because once you feel safe in your body again, then you have the platform. So when you're feeling anxious, or as I like to say, alarmed, go, where in my body do I feel this? Where is it? For me, it's in my solar plexus. I talk about that in the book. But find where the alarm is in your system. And some people it's in their throat. Some people it's in their across their shoulders. But see if you can put your hand over it and just sort of make a mental connection with that alarm and see if you don't feel better almost instantly. Now, it's not going to take it away, but there is a sense when I first started doing this, it's like, hey, this is the first time in 30 years that I'm actually on the right track. So when you feel anxious, don't go into your head, go into the sensation of your body, even if it hurts. Find that alarm, find where it is. Because I drill down with people. It's like, does it have a shape? Does it have a color? Does it have a temperature? Like I really drill down in there because there's a part of our brain called the insular cortex, that's kind of like the mediator between the thinking brain and the feeling body. And that insula, I think, will be in the next few years really important in changing this old pattern so that when we feel it in our body, we can go back, feel the exact same way that we did back at the time, you with crunching snow, and me in the mornings as well, and go, okay, there is a different path. I can actually flip the railway switch back over to the growth part and get out of protection. So it's really about connecting with that feeling of alarm in your body, because that feeling of alarm in your body is your younger self.
I love also that homecoming is not only therapy, that there is a deeply spiritual aspect to this.
Yes.
So what is sort of how would you describe the difference between therapy and spirituality and the work that you need to do in both areas?
That's right. So unfortunately, many people who are in the mental health field did not get trained to incorporate spirituality. And so there's research that shows on average, mental health professionals endorse a lower level of spirituality or religiosity than the general public.
Really?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think a part of that can go with higher levels of education, that a lot of times people can disconnect as with education can feel like they need to prove everything. And spirituality is beyond our proving or our being able to manipulate it, right? So it's like it's not concrete, right? And so that's in the field of psychology, the actual, the founders in the field were often people of faith. But then there was this move in the field where we wanted to prove we're a science. So if we want to prove that we're a science, then we can't talk about anything people find spooky or soft or, in some other realm. And so then there has been a neglect from that area. And then I think the other part of it has been the recognition that some people have been harmed in spiritual spaces. So then some therapists will overgeneralize and think that it is all harmful, as opposed to whenever you get people together, you're going to have some good and some bad, some things that are healthy or unhealthy.
What is your definition of spirituality?
It is an awareness of the sacred beyond what we can see.
Oh, I love that definition. And now that we're on this topic, it occurs to me, how could you possibly heal without pulling faith?
Yes.
And a belief that something that you have not experienced is possible.
That's it. 100%. Because I even say to be a therapist, social worker, life coach, any of these things, you have to have faith. And for people to show up, there has to be a faith that there can be more than what I have seen and what I have experienced. It's like when I'm counseling people who have only had unhealthy relationships, and I have to say, just because this one is better doesn't mean it's good, right? If you're just used to bad treatment, if people call you back, you're like, right? They called me back. And it's like, that was nice, but there's more, right?
Yes.
There's more.
Yes. So we've kind of started stepping toward this awareness. How do you combine the spiritual practice and the belief in something that you may have never experienced or seen
Right.
with the work to start to heal, or as you say, reparent yourself
Yeah.
in the physical space.
That's right. So a part of it is what gives us the motivation to do the work, because a lot of times we're operating based on evidence, which is what we've seen. So if I've only had bad experiences, my parents abandoned me, this person left me, this person mistreated me, if I believe that is all that exists, then the conclusion would be I am unworthy. Right? That's the only possible right conclusion, because, this idea, this, victim blaming, self-blaming of if I deserved better, I would have received better. And you will hear people blaming other people for being mistreated. They'll say, oh, well, you must have allowed it. And so in order for me to come to a different conclusion, that I am worthy of what I have not yet experienced, I have to have the belief of the more.
How the heck do you do that when
Yes.
your whole life
Yeah.
you have experienced either abuse or mistreatment or discrimination
Yes.
or violence? How do you, when you have evidence that does make you feel unworthy? Because I'm sure you get these DMs and these emails all day long, so do we,
Yeah.
of people who so want to believe that they are worthy, that something is better, that they can change their life for the better. And you and I can sit where we are and go, of course you can. I have just I have so much evidence that it's possible. It's both spiritual and I could argue the case.
Yes. Yes.
But for somebody who is sitting in the disbelief,
Yeah.
how do you cross over
Right.
to belief?
Yeah. So it's a couple of levels. One of them is to get people to reflect on what do they believe all human beings deserve.
Well, I believe I'm a chicken.
Right.
And all I see are chickens.
Well,
and I believe I'm on the ground. You know what I'm
yes,
saying? Like we
yes,
go back to
yes,
this. How do
yes.
you possibly convince yourself that you
Right.
could be an eagle if you've never seen one?
Yes, yes. So what we connect with is disrupting what we call the cognitive distortions. So it's not
That's
just...
a big word.
Yes,
What is
I'm
cognitive
gonna-
distortion?
So your false thoughts, the lies.
Okay.
The lies you told yourself and the lies other people told you.
What if...
But let me give you an example
Okay,
of the
please.
lies. So for people who were molested,
Yes.
they either were told directly or indirectly that that is their fault, right? That it's because they developed early, or it's because they shouldn't have been over there, or whatever it is, that somehow that's on you. And so we have to demonstrate that that is a lie. So how do I demonstrate that that is a lie? Does every girl who develops breast early deserve to be molested?
Of course not.
So you are not an exception to that rule.
Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
I can see another lie because I'm a survivor of that kind of abuse.
Yeah.
It's the shh, don't tell anyone, or you'll get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I learned about that, I say from my own journey, is I was taught that keeping quiet kept the peace until I realized whose peace is it keeping?
Oh.
Right? The offender's at peace. The people who don't want to deal with it at peace. And I, in this little body, am holding all of the war. So I don't want to hold it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. This is what we're taught. You're going to upset things. You're going to upset people. Nobody wants to hear that. And there's no peace.
Whose peace are you keeping?
Yeah.
You're making it easy for everybody else as it's slowly
Right.
destroying you.
Absolutely. And often then they're doing it to multiple people over the course of years. The silence gives freedom for it to continue.
How do you counsel people who, in the process of starting to come back home to themselves, to learn to fly, to stop holding the peace for other people around you. How do you counsel people to then go back into their life? Like let's just say it's a relationship.
Yeah.
Where you have somebody that you're dating or in relationship with, and there's alcohol or drugs. You've had the conversation. You've gone around and around and around.
Yeah.
And you're the one that's not saying anything. So you're keeping the peace for them.
Right.
How do you handle like that sort of disruption in your life now that you're starting to, because it's scary.
Yes.
The
it
homecoming
is.
process can also be scary because you're going to
Yes.
have to confront things.
And it's going to require some losses. And some people are not going to be happy with the new you. People like the silent you. They like the compliant you. They like the doormat you. Who wouldn't like that? Right? So when you start getting some opinions and start getting your voice and not wanting to do some of the unhealthy things you've been doing, not everyone is going to celebrate. And that will be important for you to see. Who wants me whole and who prefers me broken? And then I will have to start making some adjustments. And there are a range of ways we can do it. So like in the work chapter, we say there's one path for if I want to stay on this job and how do I restore myself? And there's another path where I need to leave this job. And in relationship with people, whether romantic or otherwise, some I will have to end and some it will have to be different because I'm different. And there can be a grieving there.
Wow. You know, in your new role, you are really wanting to bring access to therapy, to mental health support, to the process of a homecoming for people, to as many people as possible. So why is therapy, what is therapy and why is it important?
Yeah. So therapy is when you have a trained, licensed facilitator who understands how to journey with you from where you are back home to yourself without judgment and with compassion and without needing you to take care of them.
Oh, that last part was the big one.
That's the big one. That's why your friend is not the same thing. Your family member is not the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had always said objective and licensed, but the fact that you just said, you don't have to take care of them.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the huge part, especially for those of us who have tendencies toward taking care of people. Right?
Yeah.
So then in your other relationships, you'll say, I don't want to burden people, or I know they have a lot going on, so let me just pour into them. Well, this is the space where you don't have to give, you don't have to be on, you don't have to do that. You know, I tell my clients, I'm good. Right? I have spaces outside of here that are for me, so you don't have to worry. I have the capacity to hold it. And that's what we need.
And you also have the tools.
Yes.
To help us recognize and call ourselves out where we're being a chicken.
Right.
Where we could be an eagle.
Yeah.
And how to take flight.
And I will say it is so important to have the tools and the understanding, because people who don't will often blame. Let's say if you have a child who's depressed and their parents just call them lazy.
Yes.
Right? They don't understand what they're looking at. And so that's a part of what's important as well, is perspective and insight into what I'm seeing.
If somebody in your life is struggling, I'm just going to send my husband to therapy. Just going to send my kid to therapy.
Yeah.
Does that work?
So there is a benefit of individual and family.
Okay.
Right? Because I'll say, especially with children, what I saw when I first started was people would drop off their child and I would spend like an hour building this kid up. And then they pick them up and in the parking lot, they're cussing the kid out.
Oh,
It's like this, like they didn't even make it home. So like it's what are we, are we just going to do this every week? And so now I'm seeing like what the real dynamic is. So, with couples, I will say there is a part of our work that is individual. Let's say if I'm working with a sexual trauma survivor, so there's a part that is that person's journey, but then there's a part for the couple to say, like, what will the intimacy be like for us given the history, and how do we support each other and have patience with each other? And I want to name, as we're talking about people, is not only self-care, but community care.
let's talk about that. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So we heal in relationship to other people. There is something very liberating and healing in being known, like you reveal yourself and people still love you, right? That people still choose you, that people, that you feel seen and heard and supported. There's emotional social support, which is like someone I can cry with,
Yep.
someone I can share my good news with, someone who I can vent to. But then there's also instrumental social support. Are there people who can help me in concrete, practical ways? And it's important that we know which friend or family member is good at what, right? You may have a relative who's not touchy-feely, right? They're not good with the tears, but they can help you find a job, right? So that's another type of support.
Yeah. I'm surprised and saddened by the number of people that will reach out when they hear you say that
Yeah.
and say, I have no one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you have somebody that you are working with
Yeah.
who is telling themselves the story
Yeah.
that I have no one,
Mm-hmm.
what are the rituals or the tools or the tactics? Because you give homework in this book.
Yes.
Every chapter has homework.
That's right.
I would imagine every counseling session that you do as a therapist has homework. So what would the homework be if you're somebody who says, I have no one?
Then one of our goals will be to make friends. And first get their buy-in. Can we say that that's a goal for you, is to make friends? And so then we have to think about, where are we going to get these friends? Sometimes it's brand new people. So it may be you sign up for a cooking class, or you join a book club, or you join a political organization, or your yoga group. And then sometimes you have people, but you have kept it very surface. So then I want to deepen my relationships. And the Surgeon General has been talking recently and issued the advisory about loneliness.
Yep.
And what I like to tell people is loneliness is nothing to be ashamed of. Some people, when they hear you say you're lonely, they just say you need to love yourself. And I like to say that's not the same thing. You can love yourself and still desire a connection to other people. So that is not an automatic absence of self-love. And so then if I have acquaintances that are all very surface, then to deepen it, am I willing to go deeper? Because again, I can start to shift the tide when I talk about deeper things, then other people will often meet me there.
Wow. And what about, we just touched on this, and I know so many people do not like what they do for a living.
Yeah.
And in the book, you write about having a job that was very toxic. Can you describe what it felt like to walk into work and how you practice a homecoming when you're in a toxic environment?
Yes. It is so stressful in your body, in your mind. And that's even before you can do your work, right? Just the
The
social
Sunday
setting.
scaries, the driving in.
Dreading
Gosh.
it. It's terrible. And so then, of course, you can't flow in a spirit of excellence because you're, battling all of these other dynamics. And so I like to encourage people to create a morning ritual so that you show up with your cup already full.
So can you give us an example?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yes. So first of all, wake up before you have to get up.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means don't set your alarm for the time you have to jump out of bed and jump in the shower, because now you've already started your day frantic.
Yes.
So now I'm going into a toxic place already feeling anxious.
Okay.
So you want to wake up a little bit earlier and then figure out what are the practices that would nourish me. For some people, that will be listening to music. I like to say, in every season of your life, come up with your theme song.
Yep.
So your theme song will get you in the right mindset. doing some stretching next to the bed, body movement, exercise. Some people go for early morning walk, so then they already feel settled and slowed down. Meditation and or prayer, reading something inspirational and that can kind of create the mantra for your day.
Why does this matter? Because when somebody's like, you have no idea. I have this abusive boss and these jerks that I work with, and I can't quit, and I've got bills to pay. Don't sit here, Dr. Tama, and tell me that I should freaking stretch.
Yes.
Go for a walk. Are you crazy, woman?
Yeah.
Like, why does this matter?
I want to introduce you to the part of you that is not an employee. You are more than your labor.
Oh.
Yeah. So if we center our full session every week on your boss, then all you are is your boss's worker. And there is a you beyond your boss.
Wow. Is that true about being in a bad relationship too?
Yeah. That they consume a lot of your energy and time, but you were a person before you met them. And whether this continues or not, you're going to be a person. And we want to meet that person. We want to nourish that person because there is more to you than what they see. And a part of what they're responding to is they see the vastness of you and don't like it.
I have a really good friend that is in the middle of a massive, like kind of venture capital pitch.
Okay.
And she is doing presentation after presentation to raise a ton of capital for this, super cool thing she's launching. And she is a ball of knots. She has the alarm going off all the time. The stakes feel high. And I realize part of creative energy, part of being successful, part of the kind of motivation that can drive somebody during a very successful time and the adrenaline that shoots through you, that's part of what happens when things are high stakes. How do these tools help you be more successful in those moments where you're at bat and this is a big game you're playing, and that kind of adrenaline rush and alarm in your body is going off all the time? How do you use these tools in those moments?
Well, you practice them first. There's a little thing that I talk to people about all the time. If I said, hey, Mel Robbins, December the 1st, I'm going to take you to the basketball court and I'm going to give you 10 foul shots. And if you make 3 of them, I'm going to give you $5 million. Now, would you start practicing foul shots the day before?
No.
No, you'd start shooting foul shots every day, right? So that's what I mean. It's like, okay, so what I would do with her, the short version is I'd probably find her alarm and work on that first. But what I would do with her is I would say, okay, where is this alarm in your body? I'd find it. Can you put your hand over it? Can you breathe into it? Can you do this? Can you practice this a number of times a day so that when you need it, when you're going into that boardroom, you can do a 2-minute thing in the bathroom where you put your hand over your alarm, you breathe into it, you regulate your body, you relax your shoulders, you relax your jaw, close your eyes, you go into this place that you've practiced a number of and then you can come back out in a regulated state.
Now, from a scientific standpoint,
Yep.
From what's going on in your mind, why does this matter?
Well, because you want to be able to train yourself to regulate your own nervous system is basically what it comes down to. And people with anxiety didn't have a parent that regulated their own nervous system, so they have to do it themselves. And nobody's coming to save you. Like, I think I see that with people all the time. No one's coming to save you. Like, you have to do this for yourself. And therapists can help, doctors can help, whatever. But unless you do it for yourself, it's not coming from a place that's really going to dissipate that alarm. And I see this with a lot of people. It's like they have this I think we have this unconscious belief when we have parents that didn't quite meet our needs, that eventually that parent's going to come back.
I keep waiting.
Going to look after us, right? So we don't do it for ourselves. We don't do self-care for ourselves because we assume that parent is going to come back. This isn't conscious. This is all unconscious. We assume that parent's going to come back and take care of us. So why do we have to do it? And I'm sure that's what we said to ourselves at the time. Why do I have to do this? And that's a lot of it, is that you've got to start taking responsibility for your own body, your own alarm, and realize that it's up to you. It's that child in you that wants you back. It wants to connect with you. And if you are pushing it away all the time, that child is either going to shut down and you're going to go into depression, or it's going to go into this fight flight mode where you're always anxious. And with you, Mel, bringing it back to you, is that this is how you would outrun the anxiety, and every success that you would have would kind of put a little anesthetic on that anxiety.
Well, part of the reason too is
right.
that you get a lot of positive attention when you're achieving. And I started marrying achievement with worthiness and being safe and being connected. And so when I would be still, there was achievement means that your worth is attached to something outside of you.
Totally.
And whenever I wasn't doing something or going after something or being really busy, I didn't feel worthy. The alarms were going off. One of the other things, I've got a couple rapid fire things that I want to get in here because I'm addicted to your Instagram account.
Okay.
And you can follow Russ at the Anxiety MD. But one of the couple things that I want to ask you about. Number one, what is the difference between coping with your anxiety and healing it?
Okay. So coping with your anxiety is mostly a top-down thinking process. You learn thinking strategies that help you deal with it. This anxiety isn't real. I'm over-exaggerating, whatever that is. Healing it is going back to that child that's in you, that alarm child in you, and giving them the ability to be seen, heard, and loved by you, by adult you. Now, child you is going to resist that because child you has been ignored by adult you for a very long time. So it takes a while before you start building that bridge back together again. So that's how you heal. You heal by finding that child in you. With you, it's the 11-year-old, that sleepover. It's like going back to her, talking to her, sitting beside her and saying, look, that must have been really hard for you. It must have been awful for you. And then see what she says. She may not talk back to you for a month or 2 months or 6 months, but eventually she will. And then when you develop that bridge, that conduit to her, that's when you heal. And you're not just sort of, and the analogy that I draw is that you're in a rowboat, there's a hole in the rowboat, and it's filling up with water. Now you can do cognitive therapies, and I have nothing against cognitive therapies. I think they're helpful. But it's basically like bailing water out of that boat, right? So what you really need to do is go underneath, patch the hole in the hull, which I believe is the old alarm, which is the old wounded version of you as a child. Find that child, show them that they are seen, heard, and loved by you. High five them in the mirror, whatever you need to do. Find that child and heal them. And then you heal at the root cause of it. You're not just bailing water by trying to change your thoughts. You're actually getting to the root cause of what's causing your anxiety, which is really a state of alarm.
I wanted to talk to you because you came into the kitchen tonight and you're like, oh my God, I just had the best therapy session. And I thought, how many 17-year-old guys walk into the kitchen and announce to their family that?
I don't know. I do not know.
Do you care?
No, not really.
Talk to me about therapy. Do you like therapy?
I would like to talk to your audience about therapy.
Okay, do it.
Guys, therapy is it's awesome. I love my therapist. I love therapy. When I was younger, I had a horrible experience with therapy. It was with this old woman who tried to convince me how to use an elevator because that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid of elevators. She was like, you need to ride the elevator. And I was like, I don't want to. And so I hated therapy. I hated it. And then I got a new therapist last year and it changed my life.
How?
Because I just love having... It's almost like therapy is almost like having a notebook, but you don't have to write and you actually get an answer back. So you don't have to take the time and your hand hurts and all that stuff to write down your thoughts. You just say it and then they say something back to you. And it doesn't have to help, but it's just nice to hear someone say something that isn't part of your friend group or a family member. They're just someone that's there to listen, and maybe that's all they need to do. And I love therapy, and I would fully recommend therapy to anyone, because no, it's not like some bad thing. And if you have a therapist, you're super messed up in the head and like everything in your life is going to shit. Like, no, therapy rocks. You can have it when you're perfectly fine and happy. I think everyone should have a therapist because it's just the best.
I agree with you. And the thing that I realize now is, had I gone and worked with a therapist, Oak, when things were going okay,
They probably wouldn't have gone back. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I hate to burst your bubble, but you are not going to be able to solve all your problems, and your friends with the similar age as you and the similar mindset will not be able to solve the same problems that you have.
Oh my God. Well, I'm so happy and appreciative that you were like, yeah, I'll sit down on the mics with your mom and tell you why this therapy session with Keith was so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Of course.
Why did you want to do it?
Because I felt like I was in a good mood, and I was like, you know what? Like, I haven't done it in a while. Like, might as well I'll just jump in there and be nice.
Why do you think I wanted you to sit down with me and let everybody hear you tell me in real time what you talked to your therapist about tonight?
Because what you would probably say to me if I said no was, it would benefit a lot of people, including you.
Yeah, it will. Because I hear every single day from parents around the world about how their kids and their sons in particular don't talk to them. And so it's a real, I think, gift to have you be willing to just sit down and have these conversations, because it gives parents and people with teenagers and college students and young adults in their lives, they actually forward these episodes, Oak, as a way to open up dialogue. And it's working. That's why people are asking so often and so frequently that we have you come back and back and back. So thank you.
Glad I can help.
All right. Well, let's see if this helps or not.
Let's do it.
Okay. You walked downstairs.
That I did.
And we were cooking dinner. And we had your sister on the FaceTime. She was playing a song for us. She just wrote. And you walked into the kitchen.
Yes, I did walk into the kitchen.
And you said,
I love my therapist, Keith.
and it was so funny. You just like strolled around. You're like, I love my therapist, Keith.
Yeah, I do. Shout out to Keith.
What-
Respect.
So what did you talk about in this session?
A lot of things.
Would you be willing to unpack it with me?
Yeah, I mean,
Can you just tell everybody why you wanted to share this? Like what? Because I think it's pretty cool that you're willing to.
do you want the honest answer or do you want the podcast answer?
Either.
The honest answer is that I came downstairs in a good mood and I said, I love Keith. And you said, will you record this with me? And I was in a good enough mood to say, sure.
Oh, I like an honest answer. What's the podcast answer?
This is game-changing stuff right here. Life-changing.
Is it?
Depends on how they look at it.
Well, is it for you?
It's a viewpoint that I didn't consider.
About life?
Yeah.
So it was a life-changing therapy session you just had with your therapist, Keith.
Low-key. Yeah. It's like, yeah, little life change right there, a little like tweak in the direction that my life is going in.
Okay. I can't wait to hear it. So why did you start working with Keith in the first place? And then we'll hear about this life-changing session. How long have you been talking to Keith?
Started when? Last year, April? Was it May? It was April.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, April last year. So almost a year, kind of close to a year, a few months away. Sophomore year, and it was weird because freshman year and sophomore year, there was a moment in time in my school life or in my life in the same point in time. It was, I remember the exact time. It was like March. It was like a March time. It was like becoming spring, but still kind of chilly. That's like the memory that I have from these points in time where it wasn't it wasn't depression, and it wasn't like, I think it was anxiety.
Okay.
It was overwhelming anxiety in my freshman and sophomore year, and it went away. Like freshman year happened in March. It was about 3 weeks gone. Forgot about it.
Hold on a second. I don't remember you having
because
anxiety.
I never told you about it.
Why?
Because I didn't want to make it a huge thing, and I didn't want to go to therapy, and I didn't want to like get into that. I didn't want to get into that. I was
Wait.
like, I can do this. I can solve this. I can get over this. Like, we're good. And we were good freshman year.
Wait, hold on a second though. Stop the train.
Stop the phone.
Stop the train. I want to get off.
Don't you dare do that to me.
John Mayer.
We'll include that later.
I had no idea that you were struggling with anxiety for 3 weeks in freshman year of high school. Why did you hide this from
I've
me?
struggled with anxiety my whole life. When I talk about that specific time period, it's when my anxiety was at this like weird peak where I just like couldn't really do anything, and I was terrified.
Of what?
No idea. Like I couldn't tell you freshman year. And I'll get into what it was later because I know now, but this is probably going to terrify you.
Oh,
I don't
God.
know if you've heard this story.
I don't know.
I wrote a memoir about it in sophomore year. So there was this one day in freshman year that I remember. That's like basically the only thing that I remember from when I was anxious like that. And this was actually the first day that I came. I wrote this memoir called The Blue Ceiling because artsy. And like there was this like moment where like later in the day I'll get into it. But anyways, I woke up and it was like one of those March days where it was like there was no snow, but it was like kind of like foggy and misty.
Yeah.
And where we live, like when you look out the windows, like you can't see anything. So it like you feel like you're in like a snow globe. And so I woke up and it was like one of those days where I was in a snow globe and I was like, you know what, like I'm just gonna like stay in bed and watch some TV. Like that sounds nice.
Okay.
And so I was doing that. And all of a sudden, like boom, like semi truck hits me, like I'm lightheaded, I'm confused, I'm like, what's going on? Like nothing feels normal, like I don't feel safe right now, like I'm really scared, I don't know what to do, like I need to get out of my room, like I need to go. And so I like open the door, I go downstairs and I see Dad sitting in front of the fire and he's like, hey dude, what's up? And I was like, I didn't tell him that I was freaking out, but I like looked at him and I was like, I'm okay, like it's whatever. And then I like walked outside. I like looked around, I like took a deep breath. I was like, whatever this is, like you've been anxious before, like you can get over this, like it's fine. Then I go back inside.
Yeah.
I wanted to hug Dad. I wanted to like, I don't know, I wanted to do something. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to get help. I wanted something. And I couldn't do it. Like I just couldn't. I didn't want to.
Why?
Because I didn't want to get into it. I didn't want it to become a process. I didn't want to have to do stuff because I felt like I knew what I was doing. And then what happened is I went back up to my room. I kept watching TV and I remember going back downstairs to find Dad and he wasn't there. And then I look towards the kitchen and I like, oh my God, like Rick, like thinking about this moment is so like weird and scary and like I would never do this ever and it's super out of character, but I looked in the kitchen and like you're gonna be very nervous when you hear this. And I looked, also maybe trigger warning for the viewers, I mean listeners, sorry guys, maybe trigger warning for the listeners, but I looked at the kitchen and I looked at like the knife holder. And like I like almost like a movie, like I could fully imagine myself like stabbing myself in the stomach with a knife. And like part of me was like, I should. And I was like, holy fucking shit, like this is not happening right now. Like I am not suicidal. Like I don't want to kill myself. Like I want to live. So like I go back outside. I'm like hyperventilating. I'm like hyperventilating right now. And I like look around. I'm like breathing in and out. I'm like I'm gonna be okay. Like it's all okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And like there was this feeling of lightheadedness and I just couldn't think clearly. And I felt like nothing I would do in that moment would ever matter. And so why do anything? And so that's why I had that thought is like, I should just like stab myself. Cause like if I do something and it doesn't matter, like why do it? Like why do anything? So like, why would I keep living my life if nothing I do will ever matter? Like, why not just end it now? Then that night, The reason the memoir was called The Blue Ceiling is because later that night I had this like ceiling projector. It was like it projected like this blue night sky onto my ceiling. It was super cool. Still have it. And I just like remember, this is going to be like such a main character moment, but it was like, and it is, I will fully admit to that. But I reached my hand up and I like looked at my outline of my hand and I was just like crying for no reason. In like the darkness of my room, is like my ceiling was blue and like that was the only light. And I was just like looking at my hand outline and crying and just being terrified. And then it basically just like went away. It was gone. I never thought about it again. Freshman year, like it was gone. Didn't think about it.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
Are you nervous about what I might ask?
No, not really.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for telling
I
me.
feel like I told you that before, right?
Not that part, no.
I could give you the memoir and you could read it on your own time if you wanted to.
I would love to.
I would be happy to give it to you.
I think it's really odd that you never told me that.
I forgot
because we have
it.
a really good,
Oh my God,
open
we have a
relationship.
great relationship, as stated in the family podcast episode.
Will
which
you
was
stop? Okay.
Wonderful. I'm plugging, Mom.
I know.
No,
but so number one, I'm surprised that you never shared that with me.
I know why I didn't share it with you.
Why.
I didn't share it with you because 2 reasons.
Okay.
The first one was I didn't want to get into it. I didn't want to get a therapist. I didn't want to go on meds. I had horrible experiences with meds and therapists in my past, and I didn't want to go back into it because I was just like, no thanks. And 2 was because since I've had anxiety my whole life. Like I wouldn't say every day, but like every week I've probably had like a small anxious panic, if you will. Like oh my goodness, I'm like anxious right now. Like I'm anxious, I'm nervous, whatever. And like I can handle it. I can do it.
Yep.
And so I felt like I could handle it. And like the reason I didn't tell you is because I was like, I thought I handled it. Like I was like, it's over. Like it didn't come back.
That's interesting.
It did not come back.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say one other thing. I want to address the fact that you may be listening to us talking about a very serious topic, and we're giggling and we're light about it.
People laugh when they're uncomfortable.
Oh,
except
true.
I wouldn't say I'm uncomfortable. I don't know if I'm uncomfortable right now, but I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like this is easier to talk about when I can like throw in a joke.
Got it.
Have some fun.
That makes
with it.
sense. You know, Oak, I want to specifically address what you said about that thought that you had about the knife, because those kinds of thoughts that are really big, scary, overwhelming thoughts, they can seem uncontrollable because they can come out of nowhere and they can start to get more and more frequent and overwhelming. They are very normal. In fact, according to therapists, almost everyone has experienced a situation like the one you described. But I want to talk further about this topic because it's helpful to talk about it. So hold on to that thought, because I know there's more that we're going to talk about, because I got to pause real quick for a word from our sponsors, and we're going to be right back. By the way, you're actually watching an episode of the Mel Robbins podcast, Behind the Scenes.
Yeah.
So make sure you subscribe on YouTube and also follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You want to know why? Because the more this show grows, the more we can continue to bring this to you at zero cost. And that's a really big deal for us. So thank you for supporting us by subscribing to YouTube and by also following the Mel Robbins podcast on a podcast platform.
Yeah.
All right, back to the show.
Cool.
Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and I'm so excited you're here because I'm talking to our 17-year-old son, Oakley, and he's just in real time unpacking a killer therapy session that he had tonight with Keith.
30 minutes ago, I got off the phone. I feel like you're supposed to wait a day, but no, we just jumped right in.
We just jumped right in. We are a deep end kind of family. Let's go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's the other thing I wanted to say. We have 2 years from this, meaning we've had 2 years distance from this topic.
From the freshman topic.
Yes, you're in a amazing place mentally, spiritually.
Fantastically.
Yeah, and so there is no danger.
No.
And so I'm not triggered by that. And the other thing I wanted to say is, would it surprise you to hear that having thoughts or a fleeting thought about ending your life or dying some death like that is normal.
Yeah. Because I feel like suicidal thoughts I feel like it's been talked about to the point where it's like, you're at the worst of the worst if there's suicidal thoughts. Like, this is where like shit is going down. Like, it's bad. Like, this is bad. Like, this is the worst of the worst. Like, this is horrible. Like,
I get it. Like, you're at the end of the line. When
so
the
like,
truth is,
so when you hear that somebody has suicide, like when you just said, would you think it's normal that most people do? Like, I'd say no, because it's like,
no, most people do.
I wouldn't expect everybody to be at the worst of the worst, even though.
Oh, I see what you're saying. What you're saying is this. Because this has been talked about so much, particularly to your age group,
Yeah.
it makes you think that when you have a thought like that,
It's more just that, like, I feel like it's talked about where it's like, it's only like the people with the worst condition are going to have that.
got it.
So it's not, so like when you say like, oh, everybody has it, like, I'm like, really? Like, I feel like it's only the worst of the worst that.
Because of, no, it's normal to have those kinds of thoughts. So I just wanted to address what might sound like a weird tone or an insensitive tone to say, we're 2 years away from it. Oakley's in an insanely amazing place. Oakley is in an incredible place in his life, in his mental health, his spiritual health. He's just happy. And
Period.
it's somewhat normal to have those kind of thoughts. And it's very clear that and one of the things that I think is very important, I've said it over and over and over again, is this. There's a big difference between wanting to end the pain or the anguish that you're feeling right now and actually wanting to end your life. You can figure out how to lessen the pain or the sadness or the weirdness or the anxiety that you're feeling. And you can do that, and you don't have to end your life. In fact, you make your life better by talking about these things that are overwhelming you and asking for help.
Because you can't just keep them inside.
No, because what happens when you keep them inside?
It's kind of like a Coke can. Like when you shake it up, and then it explodes.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm proud of you for talking about this, Oak, because it can be torture if you've got that trapped in your own head.
Oh my God, it's horrible.
And I think most people, including the people that we've lost, that we love, to death by suicide, I still would say most people, if somebody had assured them, if I can take away all the pain that you're feeling and you could still have your life, would you want to be here?
Hell yeah.
Right?
Hell yeah.
Exactly. Now, I want to talk to you listening and just check in with you. And what I specifically want to make sure that you hear me say is that it is normal to have these big, scary, and overwhelming thoughts. And when they come out of nowhere or they seem to get louder and louder, it can be terrifying. I know it was terrifying when this all started happening with Oakley. And I'm telling you that this is normal because so many people suffer because they believe that the thoughts will never go away.
That's what I believed. I thought it would never end, and I didn't want to live the rest of my life with those thoughts.
Now, if you knew the thoughts were going to end, would it have made you feel better?
Yeah.
If you knew having those thoughts pop in your mind was perfectly normal, would that make you have felt better in that moment?
Kinda, yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, Oak, because I think so many people, when they start to suffer because of these really scary thoughts, they don't tell anybody.
I didn't want to tell anyone.
I know, and I wish you would have told me. I wish you hadn't suffered alone. I wish you would have told somebody, because the second that you start to talk about it, it immediately relieves you of the burden of carrying this on your own.
Right.
You can figure out how to lessen the pain or the sadness or these awful, like, kind of thoughts that keep popping into your head. You can do that. And you can do that, and you don't have to end your life. In fact, when you do that, you make your life better.
Mm-hmm. How?
And that's why I'm saying this to you as you're listening to me in Oakley. Tell someone if you're having big and scary and overwhelming thoughts.
Tell anyone. Just tell anyone.
I also want to tell you, if you're having big and scary and overwhelming thoughts, you're not fucked up.
No.
Those thoughts are temporary. They will pass, and they're going to pass so much quicker when you get them out of your head and you tell someone. You know, my friend Amy, who you know, Oak, she said when you have big, scary thoughts like that, she heard a therapist say it's like being trapped in a paper bag. You can't see anything. You can't think of anything else to do. It sort of clouds your mind. But the second you find the courage to say it out loud to somebody, it's like that paper bag. It just shreds. And you'll realize and you'll see that you're not alone anymore. There are people there that can help you and will help you. And what you're experiencing is normal. And you can get through this. And so I had a question because, you know, you just said to everybody, Oak, that you didn't tell me about what was happening freshman year.
No.
And what would you advise somebody who is listening to this right now, who relates to what you're talking about, and maybe they haven't told anyone? The reason why I'm asking this is I know so many parents and aunts and uncles and teachers and therapists are going to forward this episode to young adults and college students in their life, and just people they're worried about. So knowing that you just explained that you were worried I would make something of it, you didn't want to get into it, you thought you could handle it, knowing what you know now, what would you say to that person who hasn't told somebody?
Well, if you are close in age to me, I don't know, teenager, mid-20s, I don't know, college, high school, middle school, whatever, it does not matter what is going on in your head. If it is overwhelming, if it is scary, if it is stopping you from doing things that you can normally do, you should always, 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 always tell someone. And you may be worried that it'll make things weird or it'll change things in your life. And it most likely will, but it is going to change your life for the better. In the beginning, for me at least, I thought to myself that, hey, I can keep this in. Like, I've done it before. I've done it 10,000 times before. Like, I can do it again. And yeah, you can do it in the beginning. But instead of waiting till you collapse, just get it over with right in the beginning and tell someone. That's all you have to do.
It'll make it better.
It will make it better.
Do you wish you had told me earlier when it was happening in 9th grade?
Yeah.
I do too.
Because I doubt it would have come back in sophomore year.
Ooh, good point. Okay, so you're in a situation and you're overthinking and your mind is spiraling and you're in that worst case scenario loop. Tools to get that moment under control.
Go into your body. Get out of your head. You're not going to find the solution in your head. It's not there. You know, stop looking for peanut butter at the hardware store. You're not going to find it there. You're not going to find the solution in your head. But now, whatever you focus on, you get more up. So if you start focusing on your thoughts, of course, you're just going to get more thoughts. And that's just going to be an endless self-fulfilling cycle. So consciously, you have to realize, what happens to me when I feel anxious? Where do I feel this anxiety? And can I train myself to go, oh, there's that pain in my chest again. There's that pressure in my solar plexus. There's that lump in my throat. That's a sign that I'm starting to go into alarm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my body. And this is one of the other times where I get people to draw on the best times of their life. You know, change that feeling state.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I want to go right to the moment that the thoughts are spiraling.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize you're trapped in this worst case loop. Should somebody do the psychological sigh to
Physiological sigh, exactly. Yes.
Just do that to stop?
To start. Yeah,
Okay.
you gotta break the cycle, right?
Or
so that's a great way of breaking the cycle.
Use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1
Absolutely.
to just stop
That's
the
another one.
cycle.
Yeah.
Is there another one to stop that spinning of thoughts?
Breathing is probably the most effective, you
Okay.
know, just being aware, first of all, because a lot of times what will happen is because our frontal cortex gets impeded by survival physiology, we don't realize that we're in anxiety. We can sit in anxiety for hours and not realize that we're in it. So if you don't realize you're in it, you just feel it. You just feel this terrible feeling. You can't change it. So you develop this awareness. Okay, this is my alarm coming up. That's your
Mm.
first thing. So at that point, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of the house, put my shoes on, go to the house, go to the gym, go somewhere, do something. Like do something to break that cycle. Because if you don't break that cycle, you're going to sit there and ruminate and ruminate and ruminate. And rumination has tremendous inertia to it. Like once you start getting into negative thoughts, you don't feel like doing anything. It's like when Warren passed away and you didn't want to go anywhere. You didn't want to do anything. Physiologically, we go into the vagus nerve shutdown and that shuts us down. And we don't want it. So we need something outside of ourselves. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is awesome, by the way, because it really, it's like, okay, after you've done it a bunch of times, you can, okay, you have to change your state. And one of the best ways of changing your state is changing your body. And one of the best
Yep.
ways of changing your body is starting to frickin' move.
Yes.
So, I can sit there and I remember being in med school with the covers up to my chin, like I can't get into school today. And I always did, but it was like you just wake up and you're in this panic, like I can't get in there today. And I didn't have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 back then, but it was just like, okay, I have to move. Like I have to move. And giving myself a reward to move. Like, okay, I'm going to get a nice cool glass of water. Now, it wasn't that appealing, but it was just something. It was something to break that cycle. Because if you don't break that cycle of rumination, it will just run roughshod over you.
What is it like to live without anxiety? Because I think and the reason why I ask this question is I think so many of us have lived in a alarm state for so long, we don't know what it's like
Mm-hmm.
to be able to turn it off. So what
Yeah.
is available to everybody if
Well,
they start to do the work in their bodies?
a direct access to a repeatable process where you can find peace. Maybe not right away. Maybe it takes you 5 minutes. Maybe it takes you 10 minutes, but at least you're on the right track. At least you're not, I used to feel like I was, a bubble in an ocean because whatever the ocean went, wherever my emotion went,
Mm.
I was taken with it. And the thing about starting to find that peace in your body is you kind of go down below the surface of the waves and you kind of look up. This is the image that I get anyway. I look up and I can kind of see, kind of that hazy blue when you're under the water and you're
Mhm.
looking up. I can
Mhm.
see the waves there. And you can create this sense of separateness, ironically, from the alarm, where this isn't all of me. Because when you were a child, it was all of you. Like when you were in your trauma as a child, there was no way out. You'd look everywhere and there was no way out. But as an adult, you can look and you can start seeing, you know what? I feel you, alarm. Like I feel you there. And I know that you were my younger self. But I can see that there is a sense of separateness there that I don't have to completely be taken over by this. Now, at the same time, the paradox is that alarm is your younger self. So you want to be attached to it. So can you see the alarm with this sense of curiosity? Because when you look at something with curiosity, you take a lot of the emotion out of it. It's like, that's really interesting that I've got this sense of alarm in my solar plexus, that it feels heavy and sharp and purple. Wow, that's really interesting. Because when you look at it with curiosity, you're changing your sort of psychological mindset towards it. And when you start changing it in any way, it starts making that cycle easier to break. So when you get caught in rumination and thought, you can start going into your body, even if it hurts initially, because you are on the right track and your ventral tegmental area, the part of your brain that secretes dopamine, will start telling you you're on the right track. And I think that's when we start healing, we get this sense of power over the alarm because we have been prisoners of it for so long. And in a way, we are prisoners of our younger child. If we don't pay attention to them, they will make us miserable together. So when you start paying attention to that and you start knowing, hey, I'm on the right track, like dopamine starts going in your brain. When you're on the right track with something, you get all these sort of feel good chemicals. And then you have a sense that you are no longer this passive, bubble in the ocean anymore. Like you have something that you can tap into that's in all of us. I mean, this power, and we see this a lot with people that have had spontaneous remissions from cancers and from horrible diseases and stuff. They feel this power in them that they didn't know was there, but they just feel it. They just feel that power. And I think what happens when we have trauma as children is we lose faith in that power. We lose sight of that power. So when you connect with your younger self again, you can have access to that power that's in all of us, that sense of peace. I think in the Bible, like they call it the peace that passeth all understanding. And you get into that state. And when you start healing from anxiety and you start realizing, hey, it is actually safe to feel safe. There's a tremendous feeling of rush of, man, I suffered from this for so long. Why did I wait so long to do this?
Well, I know for me personally, it happened a lot faster than I expected it to. And the experience for me is emotional peace. Like there's a level of steadiness, there's a calmness, uh, confidence, like it's all available to you. And I think when people really resonate, particularly with either the way that I move through life in the last year or two, or how our son Oakley has this just steadiness, this presence, that's emotional peace that you're experiencing. And everything that you talked about related to the fact that so much of this is about the separateness or the unsafe feeling that we all experienced at some point during childhood, and how the alarm sounds now that we are adults. But there's this emotional immaturity in most adults, meaning they're just children trapped in adult bodies who are incapable of handling the feelings and the sensations that are rising up in their bodies, which is why they act in ways that feel very toxic or abusive or confusing. And it's why we do that and then regret it. And the whole solution to all of this is this 3-layered approach we've been talking about today. Is first, you got to become aware
Yeah.
that you have this alarm, that it's getting triggered in your adult life, and that there's shit that went down when you were a kid that needs your attention and needs your healing. And it has everything to do with you learning how to make yourself feel connected and safe and taken care of. And then there is the coping with it, which are the bazillion strategies on TikTok, which, by the way, a lot of it is horseshit. And so you got to be very careful. Yeah, it may go viral, but in the coping realm, therapy is amazing if you can afford it. And all the modalities are incredible and help you to cope, and breathing and meditation and yoga and walks in the woods and lots of things that both Dr. Kennedy and I recommend. And it will help you cope, and it will help the anxiety dissipate. But if you really want to dismantle the alarm, you got to go a layer deeper, which is in your body, finding the source of the alarm, repairing yourself and that little person inside of you that felt alarmed, and then taking care of yourself by staying in your body and becoming aware of when the alarm goes off before it hits your mind, and feeling your way through these things. It's remarkably powerful what you're talking about, Dr. Kennedy.
And I think that's really, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's superficial things we can do, physiological sigh, breath work, grounding, just feeling your butt in the chair, feeling your feet on the ground. Like there is something psychological about being grounded. It does help us for sure. Touch, touching yourself, touching other people, um, you know, temperature, feeling, going through those extremes of temperature, cold, heat, whatever. Temperature is one of those ways that we can access the deeper structures in our brain too. Smell, if you have an essential oil that you love, like lavender or chamomile, or whatever, carry it with you if you're struggling. Smell is one of those things that it's the only sense that doesn't get processed by the thalamus. The thalamus is kind of like this central switchboard of the brain. Smell goes right into our emotional brain. So if you have something that smells good, it will change your state right away. There is this thing also about moving your eyes back and forth, side to side, sort of the basis of EMDR. And it does show that if you move your eyes back and forth, not up and down, but back and forth, it does decrease the activity in the amygdala. Now, all those things are coping strategies. To heal, you've got to find the alarm, you've got to find the trauma, you've got to find your younger self. You have to have faith in yourself. Because I think as trauma, when we get traumatized as children, we lose faith in the world. And when we lose faith in the world, we start believing everything is up to me. And if you're a 7-year-old and you think everything's up to you, life's going to be very anxious. You're not going to. And finding that power inside of you, that power that the people that had the spontaneous remissions from cancers and multiple sclerosis and all those sort of things, there's this power inside all of us that we lose with trauma. Finding that again, it's really important. Having gratitude for the pain, having gratitude for the alarm, because that's your conduit to your healing, is that alarm. So as much as you bemoan having it, it's actually a beacon to your younger self. Be grateful for that sense of alarm, because you have a pathway now to find that child. And play. It's so important to adopt play, because when you play, you start changing that autonomic nervous system, and that autonomic nervous system runs your life. So the more you can play, the more you can regulate that autonomic nervous system, that sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, the easier life is going to be, the more connected you're going to be to yourself, and maybe more importantly to others, because we need others, because loneliness is killing us. Separation is killing us.
Give me your top 3 recommendations for play that you give to your patients.
Well, I often ask people, like, what did you do when you were a teenager? Some people say, I rode my bike, I played chess, I did this. So things that you liked when you were a kid, chances are you'll still like now. So that's there's no sort of global thing that I suggest to people. Ideally, it would be something that's fun, that doesn't really have a winner and a loser kind of thing. That, and Gordon Neufeld, who's my sort of mentor in developmental psychology, talks about that with kids. It's so important to have play just for play's sake. There is no winner, there is no loser, there's nothing there. And one of the things that I really recommend for parents is playing around the dinner table with facial expressions, like, how am I feeling when I make this face? How am I feeling? Because then you're actually maturing their social engagement system. You're maturing the part of their brain, facial expression, body language, eye contact. You're improving the part of their brain that allows them to soothe others and soothe themselves. So it's important to do this in a playful way, and that's really, once we start really adopting play in our day-to-day life, then we start regulating our nervous system in a way that you don't have to academically go back and find the trauma.
Amazing. Dr. Kennedy, anything else before I wrap up?
I think it's really being, compassionate for yourself. I have this process in the book called ABC. So A is awareness, as you say, being aware what anxiety or alarm feels like in your body. B is for body and breath. So go into your body, go into your breath. Physiological sigh is great. Getting grounded in your body. And then C is compassionate connection for yourself, and specifically that younger version of yourself. So if you do that each time that you have anxiety or alarm, you will start training your nervous system to focus on something that will heal you, instead of focusing on your thoughts, which are only going to make you worse.
Amazing.
So as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I got to say about that.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.